Roy Keane has had a total of 13 red cards in his career, which severely highlights his tough and hard man mentality, which made him feared in England for years. He trashed and ruined attackers in the Premier League and became a ball-winning powerhouse for one of the strongest teams in football history, Manchester United. Roy Keane is certainly one of the best and most iconic players in Irish football history. Roy Keane was born into a working-class Irish family in the suburb of Mayfield in Cork. His father worked around and was always looking for jobs, working at several different places and many different places of work. Despite this, the Keane family were still very interested and invested in sport, and were particularly keen on football. Many of Keane's family and family friends played for Cork-based clubs like Rockmount and others. At the age of 9, Roy took up boxing due to his Irish heritage and was quite skilled at the sport due to his years of training in it. Keane won all of his 4 bouts in the Novice League, but soon decided to do football instead. During this period of boxing, Keane played for Rockmount, and his great potential was highlighted because Roy became Player of the Year in his first season with the club. Growing up, Roy stated that he supported Celtic and Tottenham Hotspur. He also took a liking to Manchester United's Brian Robson, stating that he was his favorite player growing up, which then inspired his love for Manchester United. Keane's journey to a move abroad was quite difficult, because not only while he was at Rockmount did all of his friends and teammates get moved to clubs abroad and more opportunities than him, but he was also denied a chance to play for the Ireland schoolboys team at 14 because he was too small and not tall enough. Unbothered, he kept on applying for English clubs, but kept on failing. Due to this, at 19 he joined semi-professional club Cove Ramblers in a final attempt to make it as a footballer. His potential undoubtedly showed at Cove Ramblers and impressed a few great Premier League teams. Keane impressed Forest manager Brian Clough and eventually signed for Nottingham Forest for £47,000 and joined in the summer of 1990. Keane struggled to fit in at Forest due to the long periods of time he would have to spend away from his family. Sometimes Keane would go back up to Cork for a few days when there was no games being played. He later shared in an interview that he was very grateful that Brian Clough allowed him to do that, and thanked him later on. His first games for Forest was for the under-21s team in a pre-season tour in Holland. He impressed, scoring the winning goal in a penalty shootout, and his genuine play was great as well. He made his debut for the Nottingham Forest first team against Liverpool at the start of the 90-91 season, where he impressed yet again, encouraging Brian Clough to play him more. He scored his first goal later that season against Sheffield United, and then became a regular starter over regular England international Steve Hodge. Roy had a great campaign in the run to the 1991 FA Cup final, where they ultimately lost to Tottenham Hotspur. During that run, however, Keane and Forest played against Crystal Palace in the 3rd round, where he made a costly error that ended up in a Palace goal, which resulted in them drawing the match. When he walked in the dressing room, Brian Clough punched Roy in the chest, knocking him to the floor. Despite this incident, Keane managed to maintain a strong relationship with the manager, even siding with him later in an interview where he said, "He can understand the pressure as a manger." In 1992, Roy Keane was one of the highest potential midfielders in the Premier League, and a lot of top teams was wanting his signature. Blackburn Rovers were particularly interested in singing him, and after Brian Clough announced that he would not be signing a contract extension, everybody thought that he would be singing for the Lancaster club. Tony Dalglish had put in an appropriate £4 million offer, and all the contracts were ironed out. It was almost fact that Roy Keane was a Blackburn player. However, there was a major mistake in the contract, which didn't allow Roy Keane to join. Due to this massive mishap, Manchester United's Sir Alex Ferguson called Roy Keane and said that he could become a United player if he didn't join Blackburn, and Roy agreed. Manchester United signed Roy Keane for £3.75 million, which was a British record transfer at the time, and also $250,000 less on what Blackburn were going to pay. Sir Alex had gotten the stake of the century, and Roy Keane was a Manchester United player. Although he was the British record transfer fee, coming into Manchester United he was not expected to start. Brian Robson was one of the best Manchester United players of all time, and Paul Ince was reliable and Keane wasn't expected to start over them. Robson was 36 and meeting the end of his career. Injuries kept Robson out of the team for most of the first season Roy Keane had at Manchester United. This allowed him to get playing time and prove himself at a bigger and better club. He did not disappoint. He grabbed a few goals that season, the most memorable one being the last-minute winner in the Manchester derby away at Main Road. Manchester United went 2-0 down and looked like they would lose to the much worse Manchester City team. At the time they managed to come back through an Eric Cantona brace in the second half, with Roy Keane topping it off with an 87th-minute winner. Keane became a vitally important part of Manchester United's midfield and became crucial in clinching the club's first-ever double. The following season, Roy Keane got his first red card for Manchester United versus Crystal Palace, following a stomp on Gareth Southgate. This was the first of 11 red cards for Manchester United. His second came against Blackburn at Ewood Park after 2 unlucky yellow cards. The third came in a Premiership matchup with Middlesbrough at Old Trafford, where he attempted to punch Norwegian centre-forward Fjørtoft, but did not land with the punch. His next came against Southampton in a humiliating defeat, where the Red Devils lost 6-3, with Roy being sent off due to a bad sliding challenge. The next 2 red cards were both due to 2 bookings against Arsenal and Newcastle. Roy Keane's 7th sending-off came in the Charity Shield versus Chelsea at Wembley, after a terrible challenge on midfielder Gus Poyet. The 8th red card of Roy Keane's Manchester United career was probably the most famous, where he got revenge on Alfie Haaland with a horrendous knee-high tackle. A few months prior to this incident, Roy had gone down after a challenge clutching his knee. Alfie stood above Keane and said that he had to get up and stop diving. Little did Alfie know, Roy had torn his CL and was badly hurt. In the reverse fixture, Roy got his revenge and was sent off in the process. Many people believe that this ended Alfie Haaland's career, but this is not the case. Haaland actually played the rest of the game fine, and only ended his career due to an ongoing knee problem in the other knee that Roy did not touch. A year after the game, Roy said in his autobiography, Keane, that he always wanted to hurt Alfie Haaland and have a dig at him, but his intent was never to injure the Norwegian midfielder.
But I don't think that tackle was that bad. I really don't. I know it looks bad. You know, when a player does a somersault.
Yeah.
But the damage is...
It was knee high though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I was never going to injure him in that tackle. You can't injure a player with that type of tackle. As we know, if you play the game, you know when a fella's trying to injure a player.
Yeah.
It's just the fact when someone does a somersault, it looks kind of worse than what it was. And it was a City game, and it was a rubbish game, and it was a bit... I think we were all frustrated. I think we'd just been knocked out of Europe a couple of days before it. So.
In 1999, Roy and Manchester United played Juventus in the second leg of the Champions League semi-final, where he helped his team come back from 2 goals down, where he scored the first for United. This is regarded as Roy's best hour as a footballer. Keane picked up a yellow card following a trip on Zinedine Zidane, so didn't play in the final. Manchester United won the game thanks to 2 late comeback goals from Teddy Sheringham and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Throughout the 2000s, Keane maintained a fierce rivalry with Arsenal captain Patrick Vieira. The most notable incident between the two took place at Highbury in 2005, at the height of an extreme period of bad blood between United and Arsenal. Vieira was seen confronting United defender Gary Neville in the tunnel before the game over his fouling of Jose Reyes in the previous encounter between the two sides, prompting Keane to verbally confront the Arsenal captain. Keane unexpectedly left Manchester United on the 18th of November, 2005, during a protracted absence from the team due to an injury sustained in his last competitive game for the club, caused by a challenge from Luis Garcia against Liverpool. His departure marked the climax of increasing tensions between Keane and the United management and players since the club's pre-season training camp in Portugal, when he argued with Ferguson over the quality of the setup at the resort. Ferguson was angered further by Keane's admission during an MUTV phone-in that he would be prepared to play elsewhere after the expiration of his current contract with United at the end of the season. Roy then joined Celtic, fulfilling a lifelong childhood dream. His first game was against Clyde in the Cup, and Celtic unexpectedly lost 2-1 to the current League Two side. Roy only played 10 games for Celtic, yet managed to get 1 goal against Falkirk. Roy Keane only played half a season for Celtic, as he only joined in December of 2005 and retired just 6 months after. Roy Keane is quite possibly one of the most rough and influential Irish players of all time, and his legacy will continue for years to come. He led a brilliant United side to a handful of trophies, and his prowess and individuality will stand the test of time. Goodbye and thank you for watching.